Hey guys, this is Ken McElroy, and you are listening to the Mailbox Money Show with Bronson Hill.
All right, welcome to the Mailbox Money Show. I am your host, Bronson Hill. Excited you decided to join us today. We've got an amazing guest. We've got Bethany Laflam, who's a good friend of mine. And also, we are in a fitness challenge together. So we're getting in our best shape, living our best life. And she's doing some amazing stuff, both as a securities attorney. So she works with a lot of people that are putting together funds of all different types of assets. We'll talk about that. And she also is the founder of the Conscious Capital Collective, and really help people to unleash the power of other people's everything, not just other people's money, other people's time, other people's everything that's there. And so how do you scale up? How do you grow? How do you get around amazing people? Because a lot of times when you do that, it allows things to open up. And she's doing a lot of things, if I didn't mention, in boutique hotels. So we'll talk about that as well. But Bethany, really excited to see you. Glad to have you on the show. I know we've known of each other for a long time. We connected a little more recently, but very excited to have you on the show today.
Excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Well, tell us a little bit about, I know you're an attorney, so that's kind of your background. You've done a lot of syndication attorney. You recently, have expanded your firm and have really been thriving there. Tell us a little bit about kind of that side of it before we get into your investing and kind of what you do. But tell us what kind of you've been doing the last few years and what you've seen. I know that things have changed in the market, and so multifamily, deals are not as plentiful as they were, and now all kinds of alternative stuff. So talk about kind of what's happened the last few years here.
Yeah, so I've been practicing law now for 25 years, so I've seen some cycles. I've actually only been working in the real estate space, though, for about the last 8 years. Prior to that, I did a lot of work with tech and venture and some operating companies, which is coming in real handy these days, right? When real estate deal flow is a little slower right now. But we do syndication, which is just a fancy word for pooling resources. And we make sure that when people are raising money from passive investors, they do so legally, compliantly, without going to jail or getting fined or otherwise sued, hopefully, with the SEC or with their investors. So we protect people when they're raising money. That's primarily it. But just most recently, we actually launched Catalyst Legal Partners, which is really was kind of a function of it. People were asking me, well, how else can you protect our business, right? We have the real estate, we're raising money. But this is where my background in mergers and acquisitions came in handy. So you want to buy a small business, a laundromat, gas station, whatever for taxes, we got you.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think that's it's really great. It's amazing how, as an investor, you can be nimble, and it's important to be nimble because sometimes assets make sense, sometimes they don't. And so we found in the past, I always said this, you could be a multifamily investor, or you can do other types of real estate. There are things like oil and gas, you can do all different types of things. So you've done a lot of different things that are out there. What are some lessons that you've seen from, good operators? And I know you're an investor as well. So what are some things that you've kind of noticed about kind of best practices, and obviously from the legal side, and just from when you observe different syndicators, what are some things that you kind of notice that are things to pay attention to?
Your wording is perfect in that question, and that is when you say best practices for operators. I think the biggest thing is to remember that you're an operator first and not a capital raiser.
Right.
That is where I think people get into trouble, right? Act like an operator, don't act like an influencer, don't act like a salesperson, and don't act like a capital raiser. If you act like an operator, you're probably going to be okay. That is the biggest piece of advice. Is you are running a business. You can raise capital to run that business. You can promote it online to run that business, but you are first and foremost running a business. That is the biggest piece of advice I could give to anybody.
Yeah, it really is. I was a registered investment advisor for a few years, and I had to leave that to become a syndicator. And I just think, even Warren Buffett, I love his quotes because they're so good, but just the idea of as an investor, you should act like an owner. And then when you see people that have ownership, they have skin in the game, and they're actually, there are people that are influencing and providing all kinds of stuff for different things that don't work out, or they're just getting paid. They're kind of hired guns to do it. There's actually a lot of legal risk in doing that. And in the last few years, we've had some deals, home runs, just amazing returns for investors. And we've had total losses on deals, which is hard to say. It's painful to say it, but it's happened, right? And so I think unless we talk about it, we don't actually learn from it. And that's where, and it's been interesting to walk through that. And so I guess in this last few years, you've seen a lot of that, right? You've seen deals unravel, and it's not just me. And I think this time I just want to touch base on, people love to blame people, right? Like if I'm somebody who I'm part of a deal and it's partners that are doing things, or somebody does something, or it's the interest rates, or it's whatever, or if I'm an investor and I just want to blame somebody who brought me into a deal, it's like we don't really learn from that, right? How do you go through it, or how do you encourage investors that have gone into a deal that just didn't go well, generally for reasons of things that are outside of someone's control?
So the first thing when I'm talking to passive investors is when you're vetting your operators, and you should be vetting your operators, this whole idea of mailbox money and passive money, that's after you've done your work to due diligence. That means you're not like cleaning toilets and leasing up space. You still have to do some diligence to get to that, right?
Yeah.
So it's not exactly passive. When you're vetting your operators, I don't tell them to look for someone who can tell you, I've never lost my investors' money, or I've never done a capital call, or you hear a lot of that lately, right? It's fine for someone to have had a loss. Make sure you find out early on how they handle it when there's a loss. Make sure that their communication style is a way that you're comfortable with. Make sure that they're not putting their head in the sand when things are tough and they're giving you the hard information that that they are obligated to give you anyway. So on the passive side, I would say don't look for somebody who's never lost. Find out how they handle a loss. And in fact, if they've had a loss and handled it well, you're probably in better hands.
Yeah.
Right? Because they've learned a lesson versus I haven't lost yet. Because if you're in this long enough, you will. You just will.
And that's the challenge. Like people, like it's hard to even say, okay, I've lost money for investors. It's hard. It's really hard. Some people I would be better off if I hadn't met you. Like I get that. That's hard. And so it's a bit polarizing. Some people think you're the best thing ever because these deals go well and other ones don't go well. But I think that it really is kind of the personal development side, like the Tony Robbins, life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. Mm-hmm. And I talk about this in my book where on my own, I did an investing thing where I was doing options trading. I made $20,000. I didn't have a lot of money, so that was like a lot of money at the time. I made $20,000 over 5 months. Then in one day, I lost $70,000. And it was just from not working. And I learned, okay, my lesson from that is I'm not a great options trader. Like, it's just not my thing I should be doing, right? There's other things I can do that I am good at. And so, but I think the problem is, when we blame, we push it off to someone, we don't get those lessons. And I think as an investor, you have to have a long-term approach that, and I think people kind of think all or nothing. Just had a call today, just right before this, where a friend of mine has $500K, and he's like, I should put it all in this one deal. And I was like, no, maybe you should put like $50K or $100K in one, and then spread it around in different deals. And so, where does that come from? They got all or nothing thinking that like either I'm good at this or I'm not, or I've got to put it all in one deal, or I don't, or what do you think? I mean, psychologically.
I think it's, look, I've done diligence on this one person. I trust them enough. Let's do it. And it is a lot of work to vet operators. It's a lot of work to vet the deals. I totally understand that. But it's also a lot of work to remake $500,000 if you dump it all in one place and through maybe no fault of anyone's.
Yeah.
It's all all the experts will tell you to diversify. Warren Buffett, you mentioned him. Diversify. I mean, that's it. You're right. You should spread it across multiple operators. Do the work to do the diligence on your operators. Get people you know, like, and trust, and even spread it maybe across multiple of their deals. Yeah. Right? If you know, like, and trust them. I do think it's very important though that to do the work and do the diligence. That is the biggest mistake I see, is not doing the diligence on the people that you're investing with or partnering with, whether you're an operator or whether you're an investor. It's really important to do that. And this is not a time you don't just want to go on your gut. Now, I will say this though, you should listen to your gut. If you feel like there's red flags and someone's just really smooth and telling you, no, don't you worry about that over there, look over here. Trust your gut there, right? If you have red flags or you're feeling uneasy, or maybe you just don't like the way someone communicates or whatever, that is an acceptable reason to just pass on a deal or to wait. Let me just see how you do. I'll work on the next one with you maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you've made a couple of things there. One is that there's nothing that's fully passive, right? No one cares about your money the way you do, so you should be doing work on this. There's things that are more passive, like you said, if you're cleaning the toilets and making the repairs in the middle of the night and 3 a.m. in the morning, like that's not very passive at all. But if you're vetting a team and a property and a deal, and we have a long vetting process where we get a lot of people wanting to do deals with us, but we really take our time. We really talk to other investors. We look at how their reporting is. We look at their reputation. We do background checks. We do a lot of things, and it takes a while. And then once we're comfortable with someone, it's important to keep vetting them, right? Because even just because you vetted somebody one time doesn't mean things can't change. And so I think that's really good. And then I wanted to actually shift gears a little bit and talk to you a bit about talk to us about OPE, which other people, you have a book called The Power of OPE. So what is OPE and how is it different from OPM or other people's money?
OPE it sort of stemmed from OPM, other people's money, but it's other people's everything. I have made a fair amount of money helping people make a fair amount of money leveraging other people's money, right? And what I found is it is a really good way to scale a business. Going outside your own resources, going outside your own net worth, your own lending or borrowing capacity, your own credit. It's a really good way to scale. It also can be a little bit scary. So it's not enough. The thing I found with some of these people that they were borrowing or they were getting investors or whatever, they were leveraging other people's money, is they were still burning out. They were still running into trouble. And I was thinking, okay, why? We all talk about, a lot of people learned about this when they read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Great. It's a great place to learn about a lot of this stuff. But the thing I've seen is it's just not enough. So I started thinking about okay, well, what else do you need? You need other people's expertise. You need other people's time, technology, whatever. And so I just started kind of playing with what other words could we use, right? And I started writing stories around the words, and it kind of turned into a book. I really like to write, so that was fun for me. Yeah. And I turned it into these stories, and I was like, gosh, this is actually a thing, right? This is people are burning out still, and they're getting themselves into trouble. And it really stems from figuring out what's your lane. What are you three things, by the way, of your lane. You're amazing at it, superpower, you are better than anybody in your business or maybe even in the world at this thing, right? But a lot of us as entrepreneurs get stuck in that first part, right? I'm amazing at this, so this is my lane. No, because as entrepreneurs, we sometimes have to get really good at stuff we do not super love, right? What lights us up, what makes us jump out of bed in the morning and go, I cannot believe people are going to pay me to do this. I can't believe this is my life. Yeah. But then the third one, which is very, very important because otherwise you have a really awesome hobby, is does it move the needle closer to your goals? Yeah. Right? And so you should probably know what those are as well. The thing about OPE is you actually, if you leverage other people's everything, you get to spend as much time as possible in your lane, which is where you're thriving, where you're happy, where you're the most effective, and where you show up the best for your other people, right? Yeah. And believe it or not, there are people that exist who love to do the stuff you hate or love to do the stuff you suck at. I'm like, oh my God, there are people that love to do underwriting. Ugh, gross.
Real quick, this is a huge thing that I learned a few years ago with Dan Sullivan, some of his stuff, the idea of unique ability. Yes. Unique ability is different. There's actually 4 categories. One was incompetence. Then it was for me, is doing things like filling out monotonous forms and all the details or whatever. Then there's competence. I can do it, but it's kind of okay, but it still drains you. There's excellence or superior skill. So you have superior skill, you're really good at, you're known for as a reputation, but the thing it lacks is unique ability. You have passion. So you do it and you come alive, and there's this energy, there's this never ending learning. And it's this thing that you oh my gosh, I get paid to do this, or I get to do this. And I love that, what you're talking about is really the idea of collaboration, is that, it's something that I think, and I just love that you shared it in the way that you shared. I actually need to read your book, but it talks, we think, I could never do this. I could never buy that thing, or I could never do whatever the thing is. And it's well, maybe, there's that question of how could I do it, right? And maybe it's through partnerships, maybe it's through other people that have resources. And so I think a lot of times when the thinking changes, it's just we realize we can do just about anything. Anything. There's literally people start to believe, and that's how people achieve unbelievable things, because they just believe they could figure out some way. And it's just amazing if you just commit to I can figure this thing out, and you think of all the people around you that you can resource, and people like you and I, we go to a lot of masterminds, we run masterminds, you run your mastermind, I run mine, and we're around these people that are just amazing people that have all these skills and resources and network, and we can tap into that. And that's where the strength of it. I'm sure you probably have a lot of stories in your group of people that have really collaborated and helped each other. And can you give some examples of someone who's kind of been able to, one of your examples of other people's everything and how that's worked for them?
Yeah, so at one of actually, it might have been my first retreat that I hosted. At the end of day one, 2 people who had met each other were already vetting a deal to do together at this deal. And it was something where this guy was kind of just getting into the business. He was doing multifamily. This was a few years ago. Getting into multifamily, wasn't really sure. Somebody there was an experienced operator, made a couple calls, got him a meeting, and then they just started literally on day one, right? It's just, had they not been in that room, they wouldn't have known. Had they not asked somebody, because that's where we get stuck as entrepreneurs, right? Is I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to ask for help. I can do it myself. If you want anything done right, you better do it yourself, right? I don't know how many of us heard that for me, it was my dad, right? If you want anything done, do it yourself, or do it yourself. And I just think we're just in this vacuum then, and we're struggling for no reason. And then we learn when we start putting it out there. I love in-person masterminds the most, because I think that's where you get the most done. And you can build a relationship so much more efficiently, I think, that way when you're connecting in person. And you learn that you're not the only one, right? That feels like that. And then 2, you learn that there's somebody out there that likes to do the stuff you don't like to do or whatever. And then 3, you learn there's somebody that can figure this out way easier than you. So the who, not how was a game changer. Dan Sullivan and Dr. Ben Hardy. I quote them a couple of times in my book, actually. Total game changer, right? You don't even need to figure out the how. You just need to figure out the who, and you'll get there.
Yeah. We actually got to interview Dr. Benjamin Hardy on this show, which is great. My co-host who's not here today, Nate Hambrick, and we interviewed Dr. Benjamin Hardy about his book, The Science of Scaling, which is a great book. But that book, Who Not How, was really great, and I think a lot of people can relate, because a lot of times we're good at what we do because we control every element of the process. And if you're like that, maybe a lot of people are good. They're like a professional, or I was in sales, and I kind of had to. There was a legal part around it. I couldn't share patient information with other people. But as I started running my own business, and we have several employees, it's like I want to give everything away to everybody else, and just, instead of working in the business, work on the business, right? Yes. Create these new things, look at new opportunities and new developments, and step in where needed. But it's a totally different way of looking at it. But I think it's a way that really leads to a lot of growth. Just on a side note, what's the best personal growth habit that you have, that you do kind of over the years, that you've realized has generated for you just the most personal development or business development? Is there something that you're like really into, like, okay, this one thing that really helps me a lot?
Well, the one thing is I started investing in myself and in coaches and masterminds, which is the best investment you can make if you're just getting out there and like, if I only have $10,000, what should I invest in? It's you. Every time it's you. Best investment. I think that the habit, though, that led to, which is what you're really asking, is I started giving myself permission to enjoy the ride. Right? We hear so much that it's got to be a grind, and you've got to hustle, and you got to bust your ass, and that's true. You do have to work really hard. You do have to hustle. But you really, if you are paying attention to what your real goals are and what your lane is, you actually get to enjoy that, right? You don't need to hustle for the sake of it just because it's cool on social media to be the one who's sleeping the least and working the most.
Right.
Ugh, gross. Like that's so old, right? Don't do that anymore. You get to enjoy this. So if you're staying in your lane, and so the first thing I did was I gave myself permission to only do things at least as much as possible. Sometimes we're adults, we have to do some things we don't super love, but I'm spending most of my time doing things that are in my lane, which means I'm happy even when I'm working 100 hours a week.
Yeah. Because
it's something that lights me up. It's amazing. I'm pushing myself towards a goal that I'm so excited about. And I think that we get so ingrained in this culture of I'll enjoy my life but as entrepreneurs, there's always a next theme. Yeah. Right? There's always another goal.
Reminds me of the gap in the gain, right? Like
exactly. Yeah. And we don't really, and then what we do is we bust our asses, we work really, really hard, and we reach the summit and we figure out we hate the view. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me is I give myself permission to enjoy this whole part. Because yes, you have to work hard, but it doesn't have to suck.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's amazing. Your perspective is huge. I just was having a meal with someone this weekend, and I was just talking about that. Like, isn't everything just a miracle? The fact that we can like on our worst day, we feel terrible or something terrible happened. It's like we're breathing, like we're alive, we're here. We have people that love us. We have a place to stay. We have food. I mean, what a miracle that is. I mean, just by living in that sense of wonder. But I think our human nature is, unless we actually do point out that stuff and focus on it, we just simply look at what lacks. And we really don't know what we have until it's gone or it's threatened. And that's where I think if you want to experience more joy, you have to practice gratitude, and you've got to just really point out those things that are good in your life. Because otherwise, you're just not going to enjoy your life, no matter what. And there's people there's, like you said, there's always that. And The Gap in the Gain is a great book for that. Another book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, where it's like, as achievers, we're always looking at the next horizon. We're always looking for the next goal, and we don't stop and take a time and just measure not how far we have to go, but how far we've come. And we're grateful. Like, wow, look at I'm not where I was a year ago or 6 months or 2 years or 5 years ago, which is really beautiful. So I think that's beautiful.
Well, and I'll point out too that it's easier to do that when you surround yourself with people who are doing that, because sometimes we slip, right? I mean, that's another thing that I've really leaned into teaching myself is when I start to feel anxious or overwhelmed, I now stop and check in with myself and think, okay, is this old stuff? Did something trigger me? This is old stuff that I've already dealt with and I can let it go. Or is this something I really do need to deal with? It's easier to do that when you're with other people because you fall into bad habits, and then someone can remind you like, oh wait, hey, it's a miracle still. It's a miracle. You're going down this path and you don't need to, and it's easier. It reminds me of, I don't know if you've seen there's this meme or a video of this little kid who's in the water and screaming and flailing like they're drowning, right? And the mom is like, put your feet down.
That's funny. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, I can put my feet down. Yeah. We forget. We need to remind ourselves and remind each other. I think that's great. Well, I love it. Well, I love what's being created in your life and in your community and the things that you're doing with the people around you. Tell me about boutique. Tell us about boutique hotels. You're doing work in the space. How did you get started in it? How's it going? It seems like in some ways it could be a lot of work because you're having to manage staff, and it's not like owning an apartment. You got a lot of more going on. But on the other hand, it's like talk to us about what the appeal is and what you've noticed about it.
Oh, it's my favorite asset class because there are so many levers you can pull. Right. I mean, you've got the real estate, but you've got the operating businesses on top of it. You've got the hotel, you've got the restaurant, maybe a spa, maybe some excursions. So I love that there are so many levers you can pull depending on what's going on. But how that came to be is actually one of my favorite OPE stories of all time, which is I met with my coach and we did this whole map for my life and like, what are my main goals and what am I working towards and all the things. And I'll spare you the whole backstory of that. But I decided that in my retirement, I would like to host retreats where I teach people how to create wealth for themselves at beautiful places around the world that I own a piece of, so I can get paid in retirement to go do the thing I love, right?
Yeah.
And so I started putting out to my network, hey, just be on the lookout for places where I can host retreats that are epic, maybe even eventually someday buy one. And somebody that you may know, David Kafka.
I know David Kafka well.
He reached out to me and he was like, well, actually, I have this off-market deal right now. Motivated seller, but not like in a rush. It wasn't listed, so I had 7 months to do diligence and have a conversation and meet with the seller. And it was like a first-time syndicator's dream because I didn't have anybody bidding against me. I got to, I ease into, I almost said limp into it, but really not, because I was really doing hardcore diligence. So lawyer's dream too, right? That I got to do all this diligence. And so just by me knowing what I wanted and putting it out to my network and then recognizing when it came to me that it was something that got me closer to my goals. I didn't mean to buy a hotel right away. I didn't realize, but I recognized it as an opportunity of, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I asked for. I just didn't think I would get it, the next day.
Yeah. A couple of things I love about that. It's amazing when we use our words to create, like we create it, we can do it with an affirmation, we can do it with our network, and we tell people, hey, this is what I want to create. And then just opportunities just show up. I've just seen this again and again. Opportunities show up. People show up. The situations happen, and you're like, wow, like that just, like I literally created that. Like I have, every year I make 10 big goals. This year, I think this 2025, I met maybe 6 of them, and 4 of them I didn't meet. But I just look back on my 2020 goals, and I've met all of them, right? Like if I went 21, I met all of them. So it's funny how just by creating these things and putting them out there, you actually are creating this bigger, brighter future for yourself. So you're like, first of all, you imagined it, and then you said, this is what I want. And this is something that a lot of people, entrepreneurs sometimes are good at this, but sometimes like we need to continue to create. We need to continue to create brighter things. There's one of my favorite verses from the Bible is, without hope, people perish. And I think a lot of people are perishing, not because they're, they don't look like they're dying, but they're watching 8 hours of TV, or they're depressed, or they are just like, there's nothing, they don't really see anything else for themselves. You have to be someone who's, no matter if you're 90 years old, you got to keep creating for yourself a brighter future than where you are now. And then what happens is it starts to be created for you. So obviously you do a lot of mindset and you're shaking your head. So I'm sure you've seen that in a lot of areas of your life.
Yeah, I have. And imagine if I had just written this down with my coach and then I left it on my wall and didn't tell anybody about it.
Right.
I wouldn't have it today. And it was a matter of days that he came back to me, right? And so you're right, the words are magic. or words are how you create magic.
Yeah.
And also you that have to leverage your people. Not all people, the right people, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to listen to what everybody has to say. You should be discerning when you're trusting other people, but you put it out to your people, and it comes back to you. And there's no substitute for that, really.
Yeah. So what kind of people join the Conscious Capital Collective, and who was somebody that would be a good candidate for that? Like, what are some things they'd be going through in their life that would be a yes for that group?
Entrepreneurs at almost any level. We've got people that are just getting started, like, hey, I want to make sure I start out the right way. Some people are bouncing back from a burnout or a setback. That's usually a good group of people that are in there. Real estate investors, both passive and active, find it valuable just because we have a lot of real estate content in there. A lot of downloadable tools, Q&A every week. And then even some high income W-2 earners that are like, what, I can't really retire like this. So like, what's next? What do I do? Should I buy a business? Should I buy real estate? And so it's a really broad group of people that we can support, but I think it sort of boils down to people who want to grow their wealth, but still enjoy their life.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's so huge. You just get together and you start sharing resources and what you want and your information. It's just amazing what can open up to you. I think that's really great. Is there anything else that you have found in your life? I mean, you've shared a lot of nuggets so far with other people's everything, with a lot of mindset practices and community and things like that. Is there anything else that you found has really allowed you to grow and scale so much? Because now you've got multiple. I think you have the one now, or do you have multiple boutique hotels now? You have multiple.
We have one boutique hotel right now. We're getting a few that come to us, but the diligence, you can imagine having a lawyer on the team, how much diligence we have to do before we'll pull the trigger on a deal. So we just have the one right now. And then the 2 law firms in the community. So there's a lot going on. And I think that if you hear me, and you've pointed out a few times, I take little bits of wisdom from all these other people, right? Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy I quote them a bunch, and a lot of other people that I consume a lot of this kind of content. And I do that because I needed to teach myself how to let go. And I think that is the biggest thing, is if you want to scale beyond your own hours and you don't want to trade your hours, you do have to learn to let go. But in order to do that, you've got to do your diligence. You've got to put in the work, and you also have to understand what lanes you're filling, so you know what to expect. Who was it that said? I think it was Dan Martell, maybe, who said, "Inspect what you expect." Right. So you should know what you're asking of people, and at least understand it. You don't have to go and be in every lane all the time, but you should at least know enough about your businesses to know what you're expecting. But then let go. And be incompetent in parts of your business. There are things now that come into my business that I don't even know. I don't know how to sign up a client anymore. That used to all be my job. Every little bit of it was my job.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's amazing. And actually, it's something I learned. This is a great scaling tool. The person I started working with in the syndication space, they would say this, if I learn it, I can teach it. But sometimes after a while, you don't even have to learn it. You just have somebody it's the who, right, can actually do it for you. And of course, then if you lose your who, then you've got to figure out how to replace that who, which is always fun too.
Systems definitely need systems.
Yes. SOPs, processes, the standard operating procedures, we call them the SOPs. Awesome. Well, Bethany, I just so appreciate you. I appreciate your heart to really want to bring people together, bring community together. Just the time we spent together, I've really enjoyed. I look forward to spending more time with you. We're going to be in Miami here in a few weeks, which will be fun for the closing of our fitness challenge, which will be nice. But how can people reach out to you? How can they hear about the community and get in touch with you?
I think the easiest place actually is Instagram. It's at Bethany_Laflam. There's a drop down that tells you all the places where you can find me.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you again for being here, and look forward to spending more time with you. Would love to check out your group as well, and I'm going to take a look at your book as well. So thanks for being here, Bethany. Appreciate you, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.